Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. The criminals on Wall Street are in front of the Senate this morning for their yearly check-in, where they pretend to care about Main Street, and most of Congress, who are purchased by Wall Street banks, lob them softballs. However, there was some tough questioning posed to big bank executives, including Jamie Dimon, who should have been thrown in jail. That's the JP Morgan chief for helping tank the global economy over a decade ago. First, I want to explain to you part of what this hearing is about. There is a proposed new global regulation, so all over the world, called Basel III. I don't know why it's called that. It sounds like something out of Austin Powers. Basel. Let me explain what Basel is. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision is a panel convened by the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, which aims to ensure regulators globally apply similar minimum capital standards so that banks can survive loan losses during tough times. The committee's Basel III standard was agreed to after the 07-09 global financial crisis and includes numerous capital, leverage, and liquidity requirements. Regulators across the world have worked for years to implement many of those standards, and the so-called endgame agreed to in 2017 is the final iteration. In English, this means big banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, who helped tank the economy. If you're watching, might have been if your home was foreclosed on, if you lost your retirement account, that these banks and these CEOs, due to their fraudulent trading and scam mortgages, they are the culprits that, of course, never went to jail. But they are fighting like cats and dogs against this regulation because they don't want to have to basically have more money or pledge more money in capital into their banks in the event that there's another global crisis. They don't want to have more money in because then they would have to pony up the money instead of the government loaning them the money and bailing their ass out. So let's show you. This is Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown in the committee. He asked them, I think, a pretty simple question. Would you be able to meet, if the Basel III banking regulation bill is passed, would you be able to meet the new capital requirement? Meaning, would you be able to add to your bank vault the necessary additional revenue or capital requirements? Let's take a listen.
A productive third quarter for your banks. Your banks, as you like to say, return capital to shareholders in the form of dividends and stock buybacks. During your earnings calls at the end of the third quarter, we heard statements about how you're going to continue to manage your businesses to deliver value to your shareholders. Of course, what we did not hear was any concern that your firms would not be able to meet the anticipated increased capital levels under Basel III endgame. If I'm mistaken, I would like you to set the record straight for the public and the investors. Do any of you have any reason to believe that your firm would not be able to achieve the increased capital requirements if Basel III was adopted as proposed? Any of you think you cannot you cannot achieve the increased capital requirements? Raise your hands if you think you can't. Thank you. I think you've indicated your firms will be able to meet the enhanced capital requirements. It leads me to conclude that the proposed capital standards are not too onerous. Mr. Scharf.
So there you go. These Wall Street criminals, they can meet the additional capital requirements so that we, the United States taxpayer, do not need to bail their ass out again. However, if that's the case, why are all these banks spending hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying against this new regulation? And when I say hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm not just talking about, just regular lobbying. I'm talking about the political bribes that they are paying to people on the committee, mostly Republicans, but a lot of Democrats too. The political bribes they are paying to the Kevin McCarthy's of the world, the Mitch McConnell's of the world, the Pelosi's, the Schumers. Go down the list of corrupt, corporate-owned Democrats and Republicans, and most of their top donors are from Wall Street, financial industry, hedge funds, financial lawyers, all the people in this pool. If they could pony up the additional capital requirements, why are they lobbying so much money, hundreds of millions of dollars, to tank this regulation, which in other countries is kind of standard. You would have these requirements so that banks have enough money in reserve if there is some type of financial crisis, so we don't have to bail them out. Well, because they don't want to, because that would take away from their quarterly profit. That would take away from their ability to buy back their own stock, gin up the price. That would take away from their dividends that they give out to their shareholders, not taking away from money they give to their actual workers. Even though they can afford it, criminal JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, he explained why it's totally not necessary and counterproductive. Let's take a listen.
Despite zero evidence that U.S. banks are undercapitalized today, the proposed Basel III endgame rule, 10 years in the making, shockingly, if enacted, would increase capital requirements by about 25% for the largest banks. None of these proposed changes, by the way, would have effectively prevented the Silicon Valley Bank failure. The rule would have predictable and harmful outcomes to the economy, markets, business of all sizes, and American households in ways the Federal Reserve has not studied, contemplated, or shared. Mortgages and small business loans will be more expensive and harder to access, particularly for low to moderate income borrowers, as costs for originating and securitizing loans rise. Savings for retirement or college will yield lower returns as costs rise for asset managers, money market funds, and pension funds. Government infrastructure projects will become more expensive as capital requirements for market activities will more than double, translating to higher costs to build hospitals, bridges, and roads.
Lies, 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 and damn lies. Really, in English, because there's a lot of complicated words in there, what he's saying is if you make us hold more money or add more money into our reserves so that in the event of a financial crash, which we cause, we don't have to ask the government to bail us out. We'll have the money there. We're just going to pass on that extra cost to the consumer who wants to borrow money for a business, a house, et cetera, et cetera. That's what he's saying. It's totally corrupt and greedy. But as the Federal Reserve Chair told Elizabeth Warren a couple months ago, companies raise prices because they can, because there's no regulation on companies raising prices or screwing the American taxpayer, because these people have bought off our government, i.e. the United Corporations of America. Okay, so now that we know why Jamie Dimon and Wall Street is so against this, Sherrod Brown also asked about Wells Fargo's chief. Wells Fargo has been embroiled in fraud scams for at least 2 decades now, maybe more than that, but also asked him about the union campaign going on at Wells Fargo and whether Wells Fargo would be neutral. I think we know the answer. Let's take a listen.
American support for unions, as we've discussed, is at a half-century high. Unions help ensure that workers share in a company's success through better pay and better benefits, control over their schedules, greater stability to their personal and professional lives. Workers at 2 Wells Fargo branches will be voting to unionize this month. Dozens of other union organizing drives are in the works. Wells Fargo's recent scandals highlight the pressure that overworked and underpaid workers at short-staffed branches face. One worker said the executives don't have to deal with the consequences of their decisions in a direct sense, but we do. Mr. Scharf, I appreciate your willingness to talk one-on-one about this with me. I remain concerned about unfair labor practices and reports that Wells Fargo is geared up in response to the union campaign. Will you remain neutral as these employees vote to organize?
Chairman Brown, I agree with your sentiment about the importance of the workers and our employees. And we've, as you know, we've done a tremendous amount to support them and we'll continue to do that. And we believe that it's best that we have a direct relationship with those employees. And we do intend to exercise our right to speak with them to make sure that they make an informed decision.
Gotta love it. Oh, all these CEOs, that's the same talking point. We want a direct relationship with our worker bees because that direct relationship just produces great wages, benefits, working conditions, respect, dignity. No, what he's really saying is, hell no, we will exercise our right to union bust. So we will follow up on that Wells Fargo unionization effort. Last clip I want to show is a Republican, not so surprisingly, making love to the big banks. You really kind of have to see this to believe it. But let's take a look at, this is, I think, Louisiana Senator, what's his name? John Kennedy, telling these big bankers why they're such upstanding citizens.
Unlike some, I do not think you are crooks. In fact, you're all American companies, and I'm proud of you. And I thank you for supporting the most sophisticated and powerful economy in all of human history, and the jobs you create for Americans in doing it.
Thank you so much for supporting the most sophisticated, powerful economy in human history, and all that you do and all that you sacrifice for supporting that sophisticated, powerful bank robbery that is the United Corporations of America. Notice the trend here? That's the sophisticated economy that they help support or sabotage, because it just so happens that blue line that keeps going up, that's our money being stolen a lot in many cases by those bankers. That started in the 1980s when the banking industry and the financial industry were completely deregulated, and the whole greed is good error came in. Shocking, shocking, shocking. So as, all the media focused on the 2024 horse race, tonight there's another Republican debate, Trump's criminal cases, will Biden stay in, drop out? Remember, elections, I'm not telling you not to vote, but in many cases, they're all theater, because these are the real presidents. Wall Street are the real presidents of the United Corporations of America. They're calling the shots through the legal bribes they issue to own our politicians, and they are dictating both financial policy, climate policy, healthcare policy, military-industrial complex money, because in many cases, they are the largest investors in all of those industries, particularly oil, fossil fuels, defense, military. But it's good that we kind of have this theater of a banking regulation or a banking oversight hearing once a year.